Hello, everybody, and welcome to a redo of ours that has been in the works for quite a while. Welcome to 2009's District 9, a South African-produced sci-fi movie directed by Neil Blomkamp in his directorial debut, or at least his major Hollywood one, and produced by Peter Jackson. Yes, the same Peter Jackson gave us Lord of the Rings, King Kong, and at the same year this film came out, The Lovely Bones, introduced Neil Blomkamp to the world.
To answer Glib's thing, before this, he only made shorts and commercials. However, it says here that in 2007 he directed a short film called Halo Landfall. Does anybody here know
Probably
what
a
that short
fan
is?
film, but I haven't seen it.
Halo Landfall is actually a short live-action film developed by Bungie themselves, actually. Halo Landfall is basically promotional material for, at the time, hyped game Halo 3.
Now, you may recall in our last commentary of this movie, I can't remember everyone else's point of view, but I didn't really enjoy it that much, mainly because of its main character, not Shelter Copley's performance. That was very good. The problem was, well, the character he portrayed. He was a complete douche. But it has been many, many years since then, and who knows? Maybe we'll have a renewed opinion on it all these years later.
Yeah, this is one of our very, very, very earliest commenters.
Anyway, the point is also that this is my introduction to this director because I haven't been in the previous commentaries. But the one thing that actually did attract me to this movie, because I know about the premise, because I know a few people who actually have watched it, is that everywhere I look around, people seems to be actually really enjoying it, this movie, except you three. So I want to know actually what the fuss is about, basically.
Coolio. Well, what better way than to look at the source itself, Neil Blomkamp's first ever big movie where he got to prove himself in. Oh boy, apparently he did. 90% on Rotten Tomatoes, and on a $30 million budget, this movie grossed $210.8 million. Not bad for a director fresh out of South Africa.
He also
South African
co-wrote.
Canadian.
Yeah, he also co-wrote the movie with his wife, Terry Tatchell.
Alright then, so where should we start, Waves?
Alright, we'll start just before the TriStar Pictures logo. Again, since this was on the lower end of the Sony budget scale, they had its TriStar division release it.
Alright then.
3, 2, 1, click.
See,
This
here's
movie
the
is
thing.
something of a build-up as well, since this movie was adapted from Blomkamp's short film in 2006, Alive in Joburg.
Oh,
Yes,
really?
Pedro.
Okay. See, I was there when this thing came out, because you have to understand, back in the day when this movie came out, it was hyped as hell by media for being the most genuine, original science fiction movie we've had in years at the time. Even though, personally, I find the plot to be very full of very old tropes, and I don't really see what makes this so groundbreaking and original, but that's just me. And I find the themes and I was baffled by its critical reception, because I find its themes to be very heavy-handed.
Well,
It's
maybe that's what people actually liked, because apparently the score is actually not that different, 82.
Oh, sure. I can only speak for myself. And yes, Charlton Copley plays the main character.
That haircut is a choice.
Basically, Charlton Copley is Neil Blomkamp's Johnny Depp, basically. Like, he's the one that he always gets for his movies.
Also, Sony product placement.
Dwebs, was Charlton Copley in the Gran Turismo movie?
No.
Oh, okay.
Well, I remember anyway.
Yeah, it seems like they may have more or less kind of parted ways after Chappie. Nothing to suggest it's on bad terms. Although he was in Neil Blomkamp's short film in 2018, God City.
So yeah, this is what the premise that I do know, that a spacecraft arrived in the 80s in South Africa and, did not find a way to actually get up, leaving a lot of, alien refugees, quote unquote, and this is to showcase how humans are actually hypothetically how humans would actually treat them, i.e. very poorly.
Yeah, Dibs is right. He was not in Gran
What was
Turismo.
he doing that year?
What year was
Uh,
Gran Turismo?
2023, I think.
He did a
Boy
movie
Kills
called
World.
Boy Kills World. I don't know what this is.
Is that?
A dystopian
is-
action comedy starring Bill Skarsgård.
Oh, I guess
He was
it's only based on the title of Boy Meets World. Go on.
he was recently in a Curb Your Enthusiasm episode. What was
Huh.
that? Oh, he was King Stefan in Maleficent. I forgot
Yeah.
about that. Jesus.
Well,
Christ.
to be fair, that was before this.
Yeah.
Yeah.
What? No.
No, actually, Maleficent was
that
after
was
this
5
too,
years
actually.
after this.
Yeah.
Oh, right,
Maleficent
2014.
Maleficent was 2014.
Yeah,
This is 2009.
2014 was a big year for him. He got to be in a Disney remake, and then he was in The Snow Queen 2, The Snow King.
Yeah.
Also, Joe, but the year before he was in the Spike Lee's Old Boy remake.
So, we've encountered alien life, and we just decided to just stick him in a camp.
Gentrification for the win.
Yeah, okay. This is something that immediately crossed my eye a bit. Okay, so hold on. You're telling me that alien contact, and instead of trying to, understand the secrets of the universe, try to talk to them, try to understand the secrets of the universe, try to find out more knowledge about space travel more fully. Like, this is like the scientific discovery of the fucking millennium. And instead of trying to understand these aliens, to try to, or at the very least, if anything, study them scientifically as lab rats. But no, instead, we just stuck them in a alien zone and do nothing else. And it's just like, what?
Well, it seems that
Okay,
this prologue is actually telling that at first there was the genuine interest in communicate, but then eventually they just, kept them there, and because they didn't know really what to do with them.
Now, I want to be a
Okay,
bit fair. I am not aware of what the political landscape of South Africa was in 2009, so maybe this is on point for that or not.
Okay, I'm gonna
Okay.
say sorry, go on, Luis, I'll say later.
Yeah, I was going to say, okay, I get that South Africa might not exactly have the resources and financial means to properly deal with aliens, but really, I mean, it's not like Johannesburg is some random place not known. It's the capital of South Africa, a place rooted in really controversial history. It's not like people don't know what it is, and no Americans or anything
Like,
came
yeah, because
over and said, "Yeah, okay, well, why don't you just why don't you just do anything else other than just have him in a camp?"
there are plenty of scientific organizations that will single-handedly finance expeditions from various scientists all over the world to, come try to, But the other problem I have immediately with this is it creates a very David Cage style, super on the nose allegory for every minority, every community that has ever been put on camps or whatever. Like, again, it's literally a Detroit Become Human type of thing, where it's just like the allegory is so paper thin, and what the movie's trying to say is so incredibly obvious. It's punching you in the face. It's just like,
Now, I want to be fair. There are unfortunately some cases where sometimes, yes, the message does need to be blunt for certain people to get the message here and there. Now, I'm not saying that is going to be uniformly the case. Let me make it clear. Sometimes that can indeed hurt a movie, but again, if that is what people were going for at the time, then I can see why this movie would have worked out well. Like, a movie that does do the bold bout of going about how, yes, discrimination is bad, but we'll also have a bit of a twist to that later on. I won't spoil what that is. If you're looking for something that does that, this movie does do that in a nutshell.
my problem with the discrimination angle, to follow up on what you said, is that the movie, again, much like The Trip Become Human, this movie doesn't have anything insightful or interesting to say about the topic. All it has to say about it is discrimination is terrible, which I agree with. Once again, like I've said various times before in this channel, I agree, but can you say something more interesting and profound about the topic other than just it's bad? Because
I'm going to give this movie some credit. On reflection, I do note it has a bit more to say than just that. So I'm gonna give it a leg up over Detroit Become Human. That one, it does have more to say to that, and two, this was made in 2009. Detroit Become Human was made much later at a
9 years later.
At a much, much, much more complicated time in history, needless to say. That's not to say 2009 was all suns, peaches, and roses either, but to put things into perspective, it was something of a simpler time. At least that's how it's looked
The
back
worst
on
that was happening
nowadays.
around the time outside of the continuous war on terror was the financial crisis, but it was also the first major year of the first Obama administration, so there was a genuine set of optimism throughout the world.
Pretty much. So something like this that's going on a bold statement about how discrimination is bad. Look how far we've come,
Not
because
to
to the movie's
mention,
credit, it
this
is set mainly in the past,
This
too.
is also set in South Africa, so if I had to guess, they're also trying to make it a, well, not so subtle, but a parallel to, I guess, what happened with the apartheid.
That too, yeah. Like, again, to Neil Blomkamp's credit, he's South African, so he does have some jurisdiction on this
Which
topic.
also, what I was saying before, Joe, is that in the wake of anything that Elon Musk did in recent years, people did had a resurgence of a song that I don't know when it was made, but certainly before recent times. But basically goes something like, "I never met a white South African who wasn't a brash asshole."
I'm not particularly knowledgeable. I'm not knowledgeable about South African history in particular, so I wouldn't know about that.
Well, what do you mean, Pedro? You watch Anne of Green Gables English dub.
Yeah, the thing is,
with those legit sounding Canadians.
Anyway, Sharto Copley's character is someone who's all in on the hatred of aliens, as you see here.
Well, the thing that this opening is also telling me is that I get the idea that someone definitely wants to exploit this, and I don't mean just the media, but, someone for a military scientific kind of level.
Also, that guy, that soldier there just looked like a bald Tom Hanks there. But
I will say this in regards to this movie. While I'm not sure how I feel about this movie, one thing I do recall that did make me raise an eyebrow was how this movie for a long time was considered Blomkamp's best. Like, typically when it came to his fan base, they would say District 9 was great, but then they'd grumble and groan at Elysium, and especially Chappie saying, "Oh, he's lost his touch. These movies don't weigh up to District 9. And okay, even without me giving District 9 my worst, I always thought Elysium was the best of his trilogy. There were some people who would also argue that, oh, he's making the same movie over and over again. I'll be honest, in hindsight, I feel like that's not entirely the case either. Again, like, I'm coming back to this a wiser, older man. God, nearly 10 years, I think, since we commentated on this. So
actually, no, it has been 10 years. Actually, yes,
are
10 years.
Elysium and Chappie also stylized in this kind of particular way as a quasi-documentary?
Okay. If I recall correctly, no, Chappie does not have the found footage. Well, it has a bit of the found footage.
It's not even found footage. It's stylized like an actual documentary that you're seeing. You combine some stock footage while you actually, part of the camera, like an actual documentary that you will see on TV.
Chappie had like a tiny bit of footage, but I don't think it does it nearly as much as District 9 did. Also, Elysium, I think, is the most traditional of the three first Blomkamp movies.
There is one thing as also, the movie got banned in Nigeria because of its, as TV Tropes calls it, unflattering depictions of Nigerian gangsters and scammers.
Oh, I think we should have gotten Deji for this.
Well, but if we show this film to Deji at some point off commentary, we can ask him about it.
Hey, District 9! That's the name of the movie!
They dropped it quite a few times for now.
It's mainly because in South Africa, Nigerian immigrants are often don't have a lot of money and they keep getting blamed for crime increases. And the segments in this movie were obtained by asking South African locals for what they thought on Nigerian immigrants.
Oh, lovely.
Look, I'm not going to assume the worst of all South Africans, but South Africa is where you'll kind of find most of the white population of Africa, and Nigeria is darker in a lot of ways, needless to say. So again, I'm not going to act like they're all racist, but I feel like going off of Nigeria while asking South Africans about that is...
It's like going around in Texas, what's your opinion about Mexico?
Oh, and it gets better. Apparently, when they filmed those interviews asking for their opinions on Nigerian immigrants, the footage is in this movie. The movie then edited them to make it look like they were talking about space aliens.
Oh yeah, it's pretty clear to me that that's what the allegory that they're going for. Again, the whole apartheid thing, segregation, and classism.
That being said, it's kind of awkward that they're using people's descriptions of, well, black people to describe aliens.
Yeah.
Oh my god, you're telling me that the alien that we stuck in a fucking segregation zone is kind of pissy at humans? Who would have thought? But, okay, for the sake of saying something positive, for a $30 million budget, the aliens do look pretty good. I don't care much for their designs.
They're using the tricky cams trick in order to make the CGI not being too visible. I can see that.
I think.
Well, we got a couple close shots that, in my opinion, looked pretty good for a $30 million budget. So I personally don't mind how the movie looks. And yeah, in true Sharlto Copley fashion, he's very over the top.
Okay, so to Sharlto Copley's character's credit, he's not like kill them all immediately. Like, don't get me wrong, he's racist against them, but he's
exploitative. That's what the vibe I've got so far.
Like, okay, he's more exploitative than violent against them, in the sense that he technically doesn't want to incite violence against them, but
if he can make a buck out of it.
Let me put it like this. It's like how you got the violent racist, and then you got the racists who don't feel like they're being racist, as in they think that they're trying to help, but they still come off as racist. I'm guessing the reason the aliens are stuck here is because their ship is down, because otherwise you'd think they'd want to get the hell out of Dodge. Which is interesting when we later get to a later plot point.
The thing that I heard again is that the movie is also built as a bit of a mystery because despite the research, the humans don't know exactly if the prawns, as we're calling them, were actually the occupants or like a species that was kept there.
And the filming of this movie took place in actual Johannesburg slums, and the residents of them are going to be moved to better housing provided by the government. But by the time filming started, not all the residents have been moved yet.
Oh man! Well, I mean, it does fit also with the time period in the 2000s. Unfortunately,
I can just imagine if Neil Breen passed through here, would talk about how the government and the international bankers, pimps. They're all corrupt.
Then he waves his hand and people spontaneously explode.
Neil Breen collaborating with Neil Blomkamp.
You have to remember, Joe, it's a matter of egos. It's not really working.
This guy, this crime boss. This is one of the things I actually remember the most about this movie, and it's actually kind of funny. This guy, I think that later on during the movie, will think, if I start eating the aliens, I'll actually get their power.
I understand that you are what you eat is a saying, but I think you're taking that a bit too literally.
Oh, apparently, you know that South African rap group, The Anthem, that we saw in Chappie?
Mm-hmm.
Since they're good friends with Blomkamp, they were supposed to be in this film, but scheduling difficulties put a stop to that.
Much to Dwibbs'
Oh
joy.
no, what a tragedy.
Charlotte Copley
Yeah.
performing alien abortion.
Not just that, like, don't you think you should bring gloves when you're messing with the alien goo?
Remember, Pedro, this was not too far. Well, okay, 3 years prior from Prometheus, where the mentality was, just shove your hand in there. Don't be such a skeptic.
I guess.
Yeah, okay. I get.
Only
I get-
sissies wear masks. Holy cow.
That's literally the Prometheus thing. Oh my god, I forgot about
Okay,
that.
I get what some media likes to do. Start the main character as a massive arsehole, and then later on we sympathise with him more and all that jazz. We've seen it in other things, like
Oh,
House,
like-
for example.
Or heck, the Emperor's New Groove. Like, I'll be honest, Cusco could have been like the villain of that movie at the start, basically.
Obviously, yeah.
But Wikus, on the other hand, is far worse than Cusco. And no, I don't feel sorry for him because he's a twat.
Well, hold on to this. Well, let's wait till later before we start having that debate because it's a bit too early for that.
See, there you go. They did found, scientific discovery, particularly about their weaponry.
I guess. I just think like there should be like a bigger effort to try to dissect these things, see what they're made of.
Do you Yes,
Thank you. I totally needed to watch the alien take a piss on camera, you know? Yeah, it's so much to the story.
they piss green acid.
So from what I'm checking here, outside of Charlotte Copley, I haven't seen much in terms of, the other major people involved with this in terms of acting.
Most of the
Charlotte
actors in this
Copley
movie are
feels-
probably South African people that are not particularly well known worldwide, probably.
Okay. That will explain also the lower budget.
Mm-hmm. I think isn't Charlotte Copley himself South African as well,
Yes,
or am I?
Yeah, he is.
So yes, these two aliens are looking for technology of theirs, which they mention only has their fluid in it.
Yeah, right here, Jason Cope is also South African. David James is also South African. Yeah, it's basically a South African cast.
Apparently, South Africans actually really dig this movie because of how they get a major movie like this made with a mostly actual South African cast and crew. Even if the takeaway from people outside of Africa apparently seem to be South Africans are terrible people, which
I mean,
I
to be
don't
fair,
know.
Dweebs, like what considering what we have learned, about how we talked about, neighboring countries. Yeah, I don't think we're beating the allegations just yet.
I don't think
Also-
all of them are like that.
Thanks for giving us Elon Musk, South Africa. Appreciate it
And-
so
Honestly,
much.
drawback between that and America, the moral of me that I'm getting these days is that we're still paying off, the effects of British colonialism.
Here's what
You know what? You're not wrong.
Here's what would make this movie genius, Jova. The plot twist is that we throw Elon Musk at these aliens and they all eat him.
No, Pedro. The minute they get a taste, they'll spit them out.
That's a good point, actually.
Okay, I'll admit, one thing I didn't really care for in this movie is And I do get it. It's to show the bad effects of racism and discrimination. And yes, there is technically a plot, but kind of similar to The Village, stuff doesn't really happen much until we get to a certain point in the movie.
I have a question. How do the aliens know what the humans are saying since they talk a different language?
Maybe
Because
because
apparently a lot of time has passed since the landing. So if I had to guess, especially because the alien seems to have, a shorter lifespan and reproduction cycle. So a few generations have passed, and as a result, even if they speak differently, they are basically forced to understand what's happening around them.
Also,
Shark
the
are willing
movie
to cook.
the movie is weirdly inconsistent with which aliens feel the need to put clothes on and which just don't.
It feels very random, yeah. Because you know what, it feels like the little African kid from Beyond Two Souls, where for whatever reason he understands and answers everything Jody says, even though that doesn't make a lick of sense.
Yes.
Well, yeah, you idiot. That's what you get from, putting your hand in shit that you don't know what they are. Didn't your mommy ever taught you not to mess into stranger things?
Well, I guess
But
not.
hey, well, hey, like you said to the black guy earlier, no. Stuff like masks, that's for sissies. Like,
Ugh,
Jesus.
Christ.
Well, I guess if I can give this movie credit, it would have felt timeless in 2020.
I'm sorry. Again, it's something with Prometheus. I'm sorry. When a character is this stupid, it's really hard for me to feel sorry for him. It really is.
I will say this, however, compared to Prometheus, this guy is not a scientist, so I can, at the very least, not have to blame him to say, oh, you should know better.
I will argue that even without being a scientist, he should still know better than it's just common sense that you need to protect yourself from when you're messing with these kinds of things.
To be fair, I kind of have to agree with you. This guy seems like he's, he's on the job, but he's got that jock mentality where he doesn't really think anything bad could happen to him because, he's got all the cards laid out.
Yes, of course. I'm going to put myself in the middle of a gigantic evil species that hates human race. I'm sure there's not going to... I'm sorry, I just don't buy that. Like it's just you're literally putting yourself in the middle of the hornet's nest.
Okay. Well, the thing is, people get very cocky when they have the big guns on their side.
Yeah,
which
and
this
again,
guy has
as demonstrated, they have an helicopter backup in case things get too dire for them.
And the aliens don't really have suitable weaponry themselves, as far as we've seen.
Uh-oh.
And you didn't think maybe it would be a good idea to bring a guard, like some kind of it to protect you?
That's what the helicopter's for.
See how bad the military is? Yeah, this guy here, if I remember correctly, he's written like your typical David Cage cop. Or in this case, military guy. And yeah, he was bitten, I think.
Burned, he mentioned. I don't know if it's something like a spit of the alien did, or maybe the blood, or he was generally beaten by that, but, the point is that arm injured.
Remember, he accidentally got some of that black liquid in his mouth earlier.
What was that black goop?
Yeah. What do you mean he's gone, Dad?
He went to take the space milk.
Oh, okay.
So he's just been attacked by the group, and now he's got something in him.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, not that stopped you before.
Don't you
Should I
see,
shoot
Dweebs?
it?
Don't you see, Dweebs? He was responding to an aggression, clearly.
He
If
was?
started.
That's
No,
probably the
no,
exclusive round.
Well, okay. Jesus, and of course the military are so evil and hard that even they won't even spare to shoot a child. Like, so let me get this straight: you broke your arm, and you still think you should, continue doing this?
He insists
Show must
on
go
doing his
on, I
job.
guess.
There's being committed to your job, and then there's just being an idiot. Okay, fine, shoot him then.
Okay.
License.
Well, you say you need a license for that. Like Tia said, British colonialism.
Yes, because aliens are totally familiar with adoption procedures in Earth.
The sweetie.
Sharto Copley certainly had a ball while playing this role.
Apparently, this is his first role, or at least his first big one.
Let me check.
I think he did some things before. He did probably
It
some.
would
Like,
be
he probably
hysterical to know that the reason he got to work with stuff like Disney is because of this.
I
Well,
know,
yeah,
right?
this movie was very famous at the time, believe it or not. Yeah, so that's very plausible.
He was also in two short movies that apparently Neil Blomkamp did. One called Yellow and the other Alive in Joburg. Oof.
Mm-hmm. So, like I said, he's basically the Johnny Depp to Neil Blomkamp's Tim Burton, basically. Look how evil the humans are to this poor innocent alien who's never hurt anybody.
Sure would be a shame if something of karma were about to affect you. But I'm sure it'll just pass in the morning.
Sure.
Yummers.
Oh boy, here we go.
Oh boy. Is that stuff that got into me earlier?
Mm-hmm.
Mm-hmm.
Oh. In 2016, Copley was actually in a Rooster Teeth short called Hardcore Henry Meets Rooster Teeth, where he played his character from the movie.
Huh.
Huh. Interesting.
There it is.
Ooh.
What's it about?
Well, that's what a pleasant sight.
This is slowly starting to resemble the man-spider arc from Spider-Man.
Ugh.
The fluid TM.
Wow. The effects used for that machine there, I don't know, that looks less convincing to me than the Ed 209.
I mean, on its own, for a shot like that, that was fine. It's just when you actually have it in movement next to a bunch of people, I think that's where, the magic stops.
So how to say it? They're speaking in a language called Swana. I don't know how you pronounce it.
Lovely.
Mm-hmm. The intermixing with the talking people feels very Frank Millerish.
Mm-hmm. Again, even before Snyder did BBS, but there was no. It was my point is that there was a genuine. There has always been a genuine love for the Dark Knight Returns.
So apparently they think it will allow them to use alien weaponry by ingesting its power.
And okay, if that was hard, I guess in universe, that conversation that the deer is having with the Mystic was basically more religious rooted. But before that, we got to know, thanks to the documentary, that the AI technology seems to be attuned with their DNA. So there is a bit of a foundation in that.
It's biolocked, basically.
I guess it's just like
promotion.
I guess it's just that it still feels a bit weird. Like it's because don't get me wrong, I understand that this kind of shit happens all the time in comics. But I was under the impression going into this movie that this movie was going to be a bit more grounded in reality. But I guess
a movie about aliens living amongst humans.
That's why I said grounded in reality, not realistic. Those are two different things. And like, what would happen in the real world if aliens actually came? Like that kind of thing. Like,
I mean, I can tell it's a more realistic, outlook than what happened in Independence Day.
Well, I definitely would not call Independence Day grounded in reality. So.
My point is that I argue it wouldn't be so much again unless it's something stupid like Battlefield Earth where they claim that the aliens beat up in 9 minutes or something, whatever the hell it was. I can generally believe something like this actually would happen after First Contact if it wasn't something, because I believe G. Roddenberry spoiled us a bit too much with how we deal with First Contacts. Yeah, I definitely need to see a doctor. Oh shit.
Well, that's an interesting development.
I mean, it's a bit tricky to calm down when it turns out his arm's been replaced by giant claws.
By the claw. Okay, some of these scenes, Short of Copley reminds me a bit of Tom Green in Freddy Got Fingered.
Oh my god. I actually do see it.
Oh, never mind. He's one of them now, which means we
Nothing
need
to see here, fine gents.
Quarantine.
There's the cylinder.
So, interestingly enough, regarding the development of this movie, believe it or not, this movie technically has Halo to thank for its existence, since back in the day, Peter Jackson, who's a producer of this movie, had planned to make a film adaptation based off of the Halo video game franchise with first-time director Neil Blomkamp. What was the problem they ran into? Well, lack of funding, basically.
It was also
Which
the
is-
time where nobody was believing in video game movies, so I kind of understand that.
Yeah. So instead, they decided to go with an alternative project. And in a sense, I can see it. Like, the alien race in this species does remind me a bit structurally of the Arbiter's species. Like, there's definitely differences, but I can see some similarities and whatnot. Basically, Jackson and Blomkamp, you know.
Alright, I guess we're testing if the alien weaponry worked with him.
Mm-hmm.
Where's me fucking wife?
Where's my wife? Fuck your wife. I just.
Let's rearrange a bit that phrase from Pan 2015 dweebs. Nobody cares about your darn wife.
I guess so.
Yeah, sorry, that is a bit harsh.
I mean, she's not really a character. She's more of a plot device. So I guess
Yeah,
I can.
she's just distressed, worried wife, to be honest.
Does she even have a name?
Well, I guess she kinda has to, you know, like for the
No, I mean,
casting.
like, does the movie tell us her name? That's what I'm asking.
Pretty sure we might have done it during one of the group scenes before.
So now he's
Yeah.
so
Her
now he
name is
doesn't.
her name is Tanya, basically. The ironic thing is that her father is also the guy who hired Wikus in the first place.
Yes, dweebs.
So now he doesn't want to shoot the prawn, as he calls it.
So he will eventually become one of them? Oh, well, Peter, just ask.
So the ironic thing is that, yes, his boss here, that's also his father-in-law.
How
Not just
lovely.
again, so the movie's going for the whole, now you've become what you were prejudiced against. How, take that.
Yeah, I've seen, again, it's not too different from, other dystopian science fiction books like Brave New World.
Interestingly enough, while there are definitely themes of racism and xenophobia in this movie, Copley has gone on to say that the theme of racism is not intended to be the main focus of the work, but can work at a subconscious level even if it's not noticed, essentially, as it is portrayed at an institutional level, despite the brutality towards the aliens by the MNU being exposed to the public.
I guess it's kind of like how, some of the Robocop movies were talking about also gentrification without having that to be, super direct.
Now,
As for the
another
whole-
underlying theme of District 9, though, is the state's reliance on multinational corporations, including government-funded enforcement. Hence, well, remember, Wikus is working with an eviction company, which were working on evicting aliens to a new district, District 9.
Yeah.
I also don't find the characters particularly well characterized. They're at best serviceable for the plot and the themes, I guess, but like in terms of actual characterization, I don't find them particularly compelling.
Uh-oh,
So-
Sharto is going apeshit again.
Yep.
Turns out that alien DNA gives him above-average strength.
Yeah,
No
to
shit.
be honest, in terms of Sharto Copley characters in these movies, I prefer him in I also prefer him in Elysium. He's actually the best part of that
Yes.
movie.
But I'm going to
Yeah,
say
like-
with the 2013 version of Oldboy, because I will contest that his acting there is quite something.
Well, the thing is,
in terms
the
of
thing
in
about-
terms of like things to enjoy in that movie, he was one of the very few.
the thing about Charlotte Copley is that he's kind of built of as an actor. He's built of the same matter as Reb Brown. He's at his best when he's just
Oh, there
going
you
ape
go.
shit and over the top.
There you go. They literally say her name right there.
Okay.
Okay,
then.
I do think he's a better actor than Red Brown.
Oh yes, but
But so far they hadn't had to dub him over.
Wait, hold on. You're telling me that he survived right after I told his wife, my daughter, that he's dead and she needs to let him go? And in hindsight, why am I saying this out loud in front of her?
Shite.
I get. Oh shit! I guess.
Just
He's
casually-
on the run from the
casually Tom
law.
Cruising around.
Mm-hmm.
He has to forage for food from the garbage.
I like to imagine this was actually Shadow Copley going insane and started going around on a stealing spree.
Definitely getting the same vibes of Tom Green from.
I was about to say, so this is one of Tom Green's most sane skits.
Yeah, and now the system is actually already trying to, pretend he was never good to begin with.
Obviously,
That he never existed.
it's
So, we wondered earlier about if this movie might have some historical ties. Turns out it does. Similar to Alive in Joburg, the short film that this movie is based off of, the setting of District 9 is inspired by historical events during the apartheid era,
Yeah.
particularly alluding to District 6, an inner-city residential area in Cape Town, declared a whites-only area by the government in 1966, with 60,000 people forcibly removed to Cape Flats.
So basically, based on what you just said, Jova, yeah, it feels very much like the camps in the Trip Become Human are a clear allegory for the Holocaust camps. Like, it feels very fit in that same style to me.
Like I said, that one did stem down to the book version of I, Robot, which also the Animatrix took inspiration from. It was just a matter that David Cage was not really good at telling that, at least to me.
Yeah, like, okay, if I had to pick between Blomkamp and David Cage, I'd definitely pick Blomkamp. Blomkamp strikes me as a guy who at least knows what he's talking about. He just doesn't tell the story the best. David Cage is a guy that, no, I don't believe he knows what he's talking about. And I believe that at best he tries to basically earn brownie points. Damn, that shop was packing heat.
Yeah, they had a shotgun in what's the equivalent of, a fast food, joint. Damn.
Yep.
He was on the top of the world, but now everything has come tumbling down. Wow, I guess Pokemon really is, good at teaching something. The fact that if you hide in tall grass, it will not be found.
Well, no. Remember, it's the typical strategy of a modern action adventure
That's
game.
true, like Assassin's Creed.
Hide in the tall grass, and you'll be invisible to the bad guys.
This is unrealistic. He needed a cardboard box to actually stay out of sight.
Also,
True.
if that was the case, I counted so many ledges that are not painted yellow.
I will say this, I do like that cool visual effect of the giant platform hanging above the
Looming,
entire
yeah.
city.
Again, apparently just parked there and never moved, and that's one of the big mysteries.
I will give the movie credit in regards to its theme of, what's bad when the country relies too much on multinational corporations. To the movie's credit, most of the most negative aspects do seem to come from the influences of the MNU.
The organization dedicated to this phenomenon.
Yes. To the Invictions, the Multinational United, basically a large defense contractor. I guess if I can give it also some credit, for 2009, the CGI on the aliens doesn't look terrible.
Yeah,
I
was
mentioned
before.
I for a $30 million budget, I will argue the aliens on a technical aspect look really good. I just don't care much for their designs.
Lobster-ish.
Yeah, they just look like lobsters. They feel a bit uncreative in terms of design.
I do wonder if, again, since, this spawned from Blomkamp and Jackson's original desire to do a Halo movie, that maybe the alien species was based off of the Arbiter race.
Lovely.
Like, yum.
It's like in Mad Max they eat dog food instead.
Yeah. And like I said, I personally don't particularly care about this character. So whether he loses all of that he has, I don't care. Especially because he was such an asshole at the beginning of the movie. So, and yes, I get that what Liz was saying. Like
his teeth.
The idea is that this is karma for him. I understand. But in order to pull that off, the movie would have to have him at least have some kind of redemption towards the end. And let's see if it changes my mind towards the end. We'll see.
Well, he loves his wife. That's one thing.
That surely will attract the American audience.
I want a divorce.
I mean,
The fact that that was the
Wait.
first thing you had to mention that you didn't do
Wait, is there an
raises more
actual
questions.
is there an actual lie about him doing that going wrong? Did I miss?
I mean, I wouldn't be surprised if, considering so much time has passed,
On
I
that-
wouldn't be surprised if something like that happened.
On that news report earlier, it said he was filmed having sexual intercourse with one of
Oh,
them.
that is true. They slander the
Yeah, okay,
campaign of
I must have missed
slandering.
it. Like, is it even possible for the two species to
Pedro.
have that?
Enough
Well, I
years on
found
the
a
internet
way.
told me that people would love to try, at the very least, try with everything.
Life finds a way.
There's not enough bleach for me. What a rapscallion! You just stole that cow head or something. Oh no, it's
You
it
street
was an
rat!
ash head.
He's going to try and
Sharto,
chop off his arm.
I think it's a bit late for that.
Do you really think this is going to solve anything at this point? At this point, the thing is all over your body, dude.
I will say also that the practical effect for the claw are actually not that bad. It can actually generally makes me believe that it was attached to his body. Like a fractional transformation.
Like on a technical aspect, this movie is definitely like they did the best of what they had with the small budget that they did. Like from a technical aspect, the movie looks good. It's shot well.
It's Sharto Copley with an hatchet. Be very afraid. I guess I could see him properly for the role for a Jack the Ripper biopic. Oh, hi.
Well. What a
How
surprise!
the tables have turned.
Yeah, because he said he'd be seeing him again to take his son to Child Protective Services, but
Allow me to hit you with my irony stick. And in the end, like, why should I care?
Forgot.
good old 90s computer tech.
Yeah, I think he's connecting the dots.
Mm-hmm. We'll just hope he landed right.
I will say this, so far also the movie has, sometimes intentionally made, but, good comedic timing.
Yeah.
Oh.
Did you drink the black cum?
Well, you can try and suck it out his bloodstream.
I know I joked before, but God, if this movie had a re-release in 2020, a man being doomed by not wearing a mask. Jesus Christ.
I guess maybe some other applicability for that.
Yeah, in ways they couldn't have imagined. Okay, to be fair, mass safety has always been a thing. It's just 2020 skyrocketed it. This is illegal, you know.
That's what you're concerned about right now.
There's clearly also the fact that, despite the fact that he's being under the transformation right now, he still retains the systemic, racism that the rest of the humans seem to have against the prawns.
And apparently he's able to understand him now, too. Although I'm not sure if he already could understand him. Like, humans have lived among aliens for so long now that maybe
Like
they
I said
learned their
before,
language.
Joe, it's more of a case of, approximation, but there is there.
See, I was always on your side.
Sure, buddy. Sure.
So basically, the idea is if he could get off planet and go back to their homeworld, he apparently has something that could cure him.
Again, karma.
And we're going to need a very selective and well put together team for this.
Yeah, that's the thing. Like the movie, first of all, like I said, his characterization isn't exactly great. He's not like the movie didn't do a good enough job characterizing him in an interesting way. Like, okay, this would be fine if there was some kind of a redemption aspect to it, but so far I'm not seeing it. Like he's not trying to change. I don't see him changing his ways or changing his thinking for the better.
Oh, Pedro, what do you say? There was that one scene where he was being tested on to fire that gun, and he was like, "No, I won't shoot a prawn."
Okay. Let's be fair. There's still a good chunk of movie to go on. I feel like the earlier part of the movie is more so establishing how this guy has it made in life, and the whole wife thing isn't the sole focus so much as it is like an aspect of the life that he loved having before. A lot of that is being potentially threatened, if not taken away from him, as a result of him now being on the other end of the aisle.
Besides, if I know, stories like this any better, by the end of the movie he's gonna be completely transformed and he will actively decide not to actually be back as a human.
Okay, if I recall correctly, okay, you're right about him turning into an alien, but not so much about him not wanting to be human, if I recall correctly.
Yeah, if I recall correctly,
it's been a while.
Yeah, if I recall correctly, that's not what the movie goes for.
Oh, okay, because I was speaking basically in Brother Bear's terms. So.
I will say this, though. One theme I do think the movie does have going for it is that, ironically, the more alien he becomes physically, the more humane he becomes in spirit, basically.
Also, here's the most unrealistic thing, unless they're actually building up to that. The fact that they're actually not using his phone to track him. Like, by 2009, they still could do that.
Okay, if he's using, like, an old burner phone model or something, that might be a bit harder to track. Breaking Bad made a whole plot point about that stuff. Breaking Bad crossing over with District 9.
We did at a chemistry lab before, even made a joke about it.
Yeah. So yeah, his wife doesn't know what to think. Especially since whether or not him sleeping with an alien is true or not, him turning into an alien is not a good look, since that would imply it came from a sexually transmitted disease that turns you into an alien. As weird as that sounds, it's completely alien, so...
Well, remember,
knows,
Joe,
but,
according to
yeah.
the 90s video game magazine,
Oh.
playing Clonoa is equivalent to have an STD.
Well, there
Also,
you go.
never
He's
mind.
tracking his phone.
There you go.
Yeah. They actually were tracking his phone.
Are we finding the treasure planet?
Ooh, their planet has 7 moons. And when the 7 moons come into harmony, son, one of us becomes the Super Saiyan alien.
Sure.
Oh.
These aliens, to me, they talk like one of those creatures out of Attack of the Clones.
The
ones that-
Geonosian.
Yeah, the one that goes. Okay.
Yeah, the Geonosian.
Yeah, that.
I guess the thought process is, lobster-like features, so that's what they will have to do. Is that it? That's what we are? Some kind of District 9?
Say that again.
Say that again, too.
It's fantastic, meme.
Yes.
Okay.
I was combining also with Suicide Squad because that's what he was saying, a Suicide Mission.
Yeah.
Oh god, I mean, of all the things to be remembered from that movie, it's the lamest sequel bait I've ever seen. Not necessarily the worst, just the
To be
lamest.
fair, James, I would rather have that being the more memorable part of the movie and not the origin of its clobbering time.
I'll just say this. Thank goodness Michael B. Jordan was able to escape the stigma of that movie.
It was because of the Creed movies. Someone did make a joke about it. Don't worry, movie journalists. You're still in time to say by the time Creed 1 rolls out that you always knew that it was the next best thing.
Okay, I guess to film critics' credit, I don't recall anyone trying to debase Michael B. Jordan. Granted, it's Jesus Christ, that was also 10 years ago. So it's been a decade, so maybe there were some people doing that, but shoot, nowadays Michael B. Jordan's treated as practically film royalty, especially in the wake of Sinners, which is absolutely fantastic. Coming back to this movie, I don't hate it, but I'm definitely going to agree that Sinners is better. But yes, it seems he has a plan to enlist the help or aid of these guys.
Mm-hmm.
The Nigerians.
Remember, this is the guy that has a huge appreciation for the transformation effect.
And that, if he's one of those that believes if he eats it, he'll get powers. Remember, this is what got the film banned in
Nigeria.
Like, okay. Trying to get past the initial yikes of how they procured some of the footage, I do wonder if it was them trying to expose how racist some of the citizens were, since they asked what they thought of Nigerians and used that for the aliens. maybe they were being clever in that. It's just
It still, at
I
the end of
can't
the day,
blame.
comes off as exploitative. So
Yeah,
it could have been done
and
better. That's the point.
I feel like at the very least they should have checked with Nigeria to see, hey, is this okay?
But again,
Like-
because this was the end of the 2000, nobody was giving a shit.
Things were better for a lot of the world. Can't act like they were perfect everywhere, though.
And funnily enough, this movie was actually one of 3 releasing around the autumn winter of '09 that has the number 9 in the title somewhere.
What are the
There's
others?
this District 9. There was 9, the
one with the animated movie we commented upon.
and a movie based on the musical 9.
Okay,
I
then.
have not seen that one yet.
2009, the year of 9.
Well, not mine,
Okay.
because I was born in 1991, so that was my 18th birthday.
It reminds me of how 2007 was the year of the frequels. We got World's End, Shrek the Third, and Spider-Man 3 in the same year. Like, it
And they
could
all
be a coincidence.
sucked.
It was more. I think what this was more comparing is about the number prominence, because it's similar to how in June 2006 they released the new version of The Omen, and the marketing campaign pointed specifically of the release date of June 6, 2006.
Another thing I should mention about the production of this movie. Apparently, this movie was basically built on improvisation.
I can see
Blomkamp,
that.
yeah, Blomkamp did have ideas for each scene, and had his actors put in, have cues for when things would take place. But the dialogues and the performances were all improvised. They did several takes, with most of it without the cameras rolling, and do different versions of them until they had a good idea of which one to do, and then film that one. And everyone agreed in the DVD extras that in terms of who did it the best, that would be Mr. Copley.
Huh.
While I do agree that actors are also creative people, and some good improvisation allows for them to bring something to the story and the characters that even the writers didn't think of at the time. However, I think it's overdoing it when you do the entire film like that.
That's a funny thing. Jon Favreau did that with the first Iron Man, and that worked out fine. But then when you did it with the second Iron Man, it didn't.
The thing about that strategy is that it can go really well, potentially, but it's much more likely that it can blow up in your face.
That's also because
I think it worked well with
spent a lot of time about the bantering, and the fact that now I know that it was at least partially improvised explains a lot.
Okay, the reason it worked in Iron Man 1 better, I'd say, is Iron Man 1 just had a much more stable cast. Like, they were playing it safe, and for good reason. It was literally the start of the MCU. Iron Man 2, it feels like the banter is just there to try and carry the movie over its wings.
Oh.
Although I will give him credit, that movie earns 1,000,000 points for having Tony Stark pretty much shirk off Elon Musk as a weirdo. God. Yes. Basically, they're dissecting the friend that was killed earlier.
Oh.
The way that bit was shot, just it felt like an old FPS video game with the way the guy was moving.
Not just that, a couple of other shots were, both from the front, like the one you noted, but also one that I noted instead that was with the camera closer to the position of a weapon instead.
I wonder if those are remnants from when this was going to be a Halo movie.
It wouldn't surprise me.
And well, in terms of the only other thing I will about Charlton Company, the next film he did after this was literally the year after this. He was in the 18.
Oh, the 18 movie.
I've
where
heard
he played
things about that
Murdoch.
movie.
Okay, I haven't seen that movie yet, and I mean it's a film involving Skip Wood, so I'm not exactly in a big hurry. But I have heard Alan Silvestri's rendition of the theme tune.
Sounds great.
It's Alan Silvestri, so
It's
that's
also
not really
now a
surprising.
Disney movie, Dweebs, so it's actually also more accessible to you.
Speaking of Skip Woods, have we still not heard any word of him ever since
10 years
God,
and not a peep. The
what was
closest
his last movie? Sabotage, was it?
No, the last one was the second Hitman movie, wasn't it?
Oh, you mean Skip Woods? Then.
Yeah, because again, Jova, the best that people speculate is that the Skip Woods might actually be instead a pen name from someone else in Hollywood that just did that as a side gig.
It's like he technically has a profile picture,
but virtually no internet presence or interviews.
And yeah, that's right. His last film, Hitman Agent 47, like.
Like, damn, you have in terms of Arnie movies, you have to actively try to make something worse than Terminator 3. But
Junior.
All right, yeah, that's definitely
okay.
Junior.
I'll should add a caveat to what I just said. I've never seen Junior. I don't plan to.
Trust me, Dweebs.
It's horrible.
Let me put it like this: Junior's the worst of both worlds. When it's not being terrible and god awful to look at, it's being dull and boring.
Use that.
Wait. You're telling me it's a movie with Arnie and Danny DeVito and it's boring?
Use
yes.
the reference that skit from Monty Python where the guy goes, "It's dull."
Like,
oh, damn.
Like, let me put it like this. I actually might have rather the movie was as bad as it can get throughout, because when it's not bad, it's just boring. And yes, it's insane because we know that Danny DeVito and Schwarzenegger can, in fact, be a knockout combo. We saw literally with twins.
That's a lot.
Yeah, about that.
Charlotte's going apeshit again.
You deserve it, you prick.
He's going full Julia Roberts mode. But what about me?
Yeah, basically.
Like shit.
I mean, by 3 years' time, it would. Yeah, exactly.
Christopher has the patience of a saint.
Mm-hmm. I do wonder, like, were these names that they were given, or did these aliens just pick their Earth names? Or, God, does his species actually just have, relatively mundane names that just happen to translate to this in our language?
I mean, that'd be an interesting name to give an alien. There's this alien that came from a different world who might know things that we don't know. What are we going to call him? Chris.
Okay, to be fair, in American Dad, the alien's name is literally Roger, and that's a name he got from his home planet.
There are some who call me Tim. moving discussion to Peter Jackson in particular, considering the whole, I'm going to totally adapt this Halo movie. I guess it's another failed promise. To go along with the current now 10, well, not 16, no 14. No, oh god, I'm doing my math
15?
terribly.
And no, 14. Sorry, 2011.
14-year promise that I'm totally gonna direct Tintin 2, guys. I swear, I'm totally gonna get to it. I swear.
Well, I mean, that's the thing. Has he even? I think the last thing he directed, I think, was that Beatles documentary.
Like,
Yeah,
I find it interesting.
if I understand correctly, after Mortal Engines, he kind of fell down.
Well, he didn't direct that one.
Oh, he didn't?
No, it was somebody else. He produced and co-wrote it.
I mean,
But
also,
he didn't
to be
direct
fair, he's still supposed to be involved, if I recall correctly, with the upcoming Gollum movie spin-off.
Oh, yeah. I mean, Andy Serkis is directing that one.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of Andy Serkis, he was the last one to give us an update on that movie. He said Peter Jackson is definitely working on it. Yeah. Isn't that what literally Spielberg has been telling us for the past decade?
It's a It's a PR answer. Just ignore it.
And I mean, because I mean, I don't know about Jackson, but Spielberg isn't getting any younger.
Okay, it's also one of those things where it's just like, even though I don't like their take on the Tintin franchise, I still understand that there's a lot of people who are fans of that movie for some bewildering reason, and it's not fair to them that they keep stringing them along. Just admit that the movie's dead. Just end it.
Okay.
Thing,
To Spielberg's credit, last I checked, he doesn't necessarily own the movie. That's the company that does it. And usually what the boss says goes. And in this case, saying, oh yeah, the company's just dragging their feet with actually letting us doing it is kind of career suicide in big old Hollywood. So I can't entirely blame Spielberg for having to say, oh, guys, it's coming, because legally speaking, that might be all he is at liberty of saying.
I mean, to be honest, the most positive things I've heard going towards that movie is that it's a better Indiana Jones film than Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And having seen both movies, Crystal Skull and the first Tintin, I gotta say, no, Crystal Skull was just fine. What the fuck you're talking about?
Honestly, Crystal Skull has that prequel thing where it was hated back in the day, but thankfully now people seem to have mellowed out on it.
I won't deny it has issues.
Well, about acting, definitely.
Yeah.
But I mean, it's not. But I mean, after years and years of hearing how it's like the worst thing since Spielberg's other bad movies, and how certain people seem to take that South Park skit involving Spielberg, Lucas, and Indiana literally, and think it's an action. I think it was an actual. They agree that they thought the film sucked, as opposed to them reacting to people's overreactions.
Yeah, like that was meant to be a comment on how people were overreacting to the movie. That's the thing.
That's the thing, Pedro. I've tended to notice that between that and that recent Paramount Plus film that they did regarding people overreacting towards people that aren't white being in movies, about how they took that as, oh yeah, the South Park creators are totally sticking it to the Hollywood execs doing this shit, even though that wasn't entirely the point. No. I can only draw two conclusions. Either they're idiots, or Trey and Matt didn't quite get their message across very well. But it happens multiple times.
Well, here's the thing, Dwebs. Like, there's always going to be people misinterpreting things. There's nothing, unless you directly spell it out, like with all the letters of the alphabet, like, there's always going to be people misinterpreting things. Always.
It's the whole thing that happened with the first Starship Troopers movie, Dwebs.
Remember when Astro Boy 2009, back in 2009, was a quote-unquote movie with a political agenda? which is ridiculous, you know? Like,
Yeah, I mean,
I direct you back to AI Colonel's speech at the end of Metal Gear Solid 2. Too much power for an immature species.
yeah, I get your point. It's just when the same creators, when it happens to the same creators multiple times, it's like the first time it happens, yeah, it's just a really shitty coincidence. But when it happens more often, I'm like, I'm not saying Trey and Matt are like deliberately spouting shitty messages. It's just did they
You also have to
did they not
understand
do
that
it
what they're
properly?
doing is a comedy. It's not like they're actually trying to teach a lesson or something.
Not to mention this. By that logic, Stanley Kubrick is a bad director because most of his movies were misinterpreted and seen as bad until 10 years later or more.
So basically, people need to improve their media literacy.
Yeah.
Okay.
God knows how many times I've seen that.
Everything does involve nuance here and there. I'm not gonna act like every creator is perfect, let alone Trey and Matt. I think they're good. I do think sometimes their greatest strength is also their greatest weakness. That is them making fun of literally everything and everyone. Don't get me wrong. It works in a lot of cases. Doesn't work everywhere. That being said, yeah, I do think the Indiana Jones bout specifically was a case of audiences not getting the message on that one.
Yeah, it's like with Team America. I get they'll try to get across multiple things in that movie that people's really paranoid fear on Muslims and
Celebrities
and the celebrities wading in on things that they don't know about, except for well, I mean, I know they didn't parody Arnie in that movie, but
there was also, for example, they made an episode back in 2010 called Inception, where they parodied arguments on the internet about Inception, like about how Inception lovers were constantly saying that people who don't like the movie don't like it because they're not smart enough and stuff like that, right?
Anyway, just to mention, about what's going on since it's been a bit. So apparently, I forgot his name. His actually name, Munir's name. Shorter Copley's character fucked up for his own
Wikus.
egotism. Wikus, there you go. Become as gods.
Okay, that's like something you'd see out of He-Man or something. If I eat the species, I'll become the species and become more powerful.
To his credit, Wikus is only becoming an alien because he consumed the black goo.
Yeah.
So technically, they're onto something about consuming.
Okay, again, I don't know if the movie actually is gonna spell that because we're not too far from the end, but I think there's the implication that the actual prawns that arrived on the planet were not actually the actual species of the ship, but other different alien species that got mutated as a result.
Depends. Like Christopher talks about having worked on this thing for 20 years. I don't recall. Okay, assuming the movie is supposed to take place in like the year it was released, 2009.
Whoa.
If he's been working on it for 20 years, that means that he's been working on it since the 90s. And if I recall correctly, it did suggest that the aliens had landed not too long after the 90s.
No,
Sorry,
they
not too long
landed
before
in
the
80s.
90s.
Let me check what the movie says. Ooh. Yeah,
it really is like an 209. The only thing is missing is the whole you have 20 seconds to comply.
Yeah, put down your weapons. You have 20 seconds to comply.
The craft landed in 1982, apparently.
I do like.
Whoa.
Okay.
Brutality.
Although when it comes to that RoboCop bit, one particular parody of that bit that I never hear anyone bring up, because granted, a lot of people it's from season 1 of Family Guy, where Peter puts a RoboCop guarding the halls in the high school. Halt! Present hall pass. Second request: present hall pass.
But Pedro, how can we forget the hilarity of Robocop 3 where the little girl manages to reprogram the 209 to be as docile as a puppy?
Well, maybe she's just that good.
Of course.
RoboCop is another film trilogy I need to get around to seeing.
Me and Deji recently rewatched the trilogy as well as the new movie. The first movie is still great. The second movie it's terrible, but at the same time, there's an unintentional hilarious aspect to it towards the end. It helps. The third movie is just complete nonsensical dumb fuckery.
The most common thing I hear about RoboCop 3 is it feels like they basically wanted to turn it into a kids show.
Yeah,
I'll take 3 over 2 because it's definitely more entertaining.
I mean,
for a lot of...
RoboCop 3's biggest problem is that in spite of being a PG-13 movie, meant to be more for all ages, it still has a lot of the dark subject
like
matter.
a guy committing suicide just out of a room.
Yeah, we have people still commit suicide, and I'm like, this is meant to be the RoboCop movie that's for all ages, right?
I mean,
when you
to
have
be
Frank
fair,
Miller as the writer.
Then there's
to be fair, PG-13 allows for that stuff. Basically, here's the gist. PG-13 is the rating you use for if you want to get violent and pretty dark, but still want kids to be able to see it for more money, basically. The only restrictions to PG-13 mainly are excessive gore, excessive violence, and saying the F word more than once. Typically, aside from that, you'll more often than not get a pass with the PG-13
Getting the
Lots of fake
fucking
gay.
robot shark out.
My problem, Joe, is that excessive gore and a lot of use of the F word, that's essential for the RoboCop experience, as demonstrated by the first movie.
I can believe that.
That's the thing, Tio. I mean, remember, that script for Frank Miller's was, A, a rejected one from the second movie, and B, was rewritten by the film's director, Fred Decker. And okay, I haven't seen a lot of Fred Decker's work, but if it's any, but seeing as though I've seen The Predator, discounting executive mandates, I don't exactly trust Decker.
Okay, so is this one of those cases where, even though Frank Miller wrote the original script, it was probably remodeled to hell and back, kind of like what happened with Cool World?
Yeah. I mean, granted, I've seen RoboCop 2 and 3. They both have their own separate issues. I mean, 2's basically a lesser RoboCop 1, and 3 has no idea what it wants to be, really. It's either really violent or it's a stereotypical kids movie where the kid is the main hero.
Wait, what?
It's complicated.
That said, the RoboCop similarities do seem quite on point with this, Mick.
And then there's the 2014 remake, which was soulless and stupid.
How do you?
I'll take that over. I'll take that over 3.
Free is way more entertaining, if you ask me.
How do you have Samuel Jackson, Michael Keaton, and Gary Oldman, and not have that be a flipping awesome movie?
Because
somehow?
none of those 3 are the main character, Jova.
Yep.
Was the guy a relatively unknown at the time he was starring in that role?
Yes.
The guy who played RoboCop?
Joel Kinnaman.
Okay, I can appreciate them trying to give new blood a chance at the role, not rely too much on the big names. That being said, what the hell were they thinking with that remake?
I don't know.
I get what they were doing. I mean, I don't think it's a terrible movie. I just think it's really, really bang average.
I've heard, yeah,
And that's why I'll
okay.
still take RoboCop 3, because if I watch RoboCop 3 as a RoboCop parody movie, I can enjoy the fuck out of it.
Oh, shot in the ass.
Like, what kind of caliber are the bullets for that?
To be fair, I've seen this weapon in other pieces of media, so this is normal, I think.
Oh yeah, like military grade weaponry can get pretty high in power. Coming back to this movie, I'll admit I can appreciate the action a bit more. That being said, I can definitely tell it's Blumkamp's first time doing action, because man, the camera can get shaky,
Yeah,
even during bits that are not actually found footage.
No, we stick together. Wait, when did they become friends? Seriously, when?
Okay, to his credit, he did literally come back for him when he could have just left him.
It just feels so sudden, though. Like, there was no gradual progression to the relationship between these two characters whatsoever.
I'd say
Like-
it's more so it went from he was just using him to they had an agreement to, okay, there was a point where Wikus could have just left Christopher, but now he actually does come back for him. I think the development is fine enough. It's not perfect, though. Like, I'll admit, it is a bit iffy at points, but I think it's fine enough.
Like, there was never any point where these two characters have the heart-to-heart talk to each other, where they come to a mutual understanding about fucking anything. Like, he's helping him now because the plot needs him to for the sentimental finale, basically.
Or like that
Anyway,
you
what we-
understand that it's the right thing to do. No.
Oh!
Well, yeah,
he just threw a-
but well,
Yes, he
obviously,
just threw a pig at him. Okay.
well,
I
yeah, that
guess,
is
you know-
true. But up until this point, this guy's been a complete dickhead who only cares about himself. So having him now do the right thing all of a sudden feels contrived and not believable to me. Sorry.
Okay, I don't think that's fair to say that there's been no development up at that point. Like, we clearly have seen him slowly mellowing out in that regard to the point where, again, he does come back for him. So no, it's not like he suddenly became nice with him out of nowhere, especially given the one-on-one he had with the kid in the ship earlier.
You know, I just thought of something actually.
What?
Seeing the effects in this movie and Elysium, considering Elysium had like at least 4 times this movie's budget, and that the effects
Yeah.
don't really look all that much better than this one, I'm starting to wonder if most of Elysium's budget went onto Matt Damon.
Honestly, I recall the action being better shot in Elysium. I know it's been a while since we commented on that one as well, but I could have sworn Elysium did improve on stuff. I guess we'll see for sure when we eventually get to commentating in on it.
Well, I was using a tractor beam. Well, remember, this was the end of 2000. It was the peak where, movies using that. I remember a lot of complainings around this era, from people like Chris Tuckman that said that almost every single movie was using it in some capacity.
I feel like shaky cam is... Yeah, you know what? Sure. I'll say it. I feel like shaky cam is like fart jokes, basically. A lot of people don't remember it fondly, but there is a time and place where shaky cam can
Please
work
tell
good
me
for a
just
movie.
redirect it to me. Oh, okay, no.
I don't know. Shaky cam can be used in specific contexts. The problem is that, like Theo said, back in the late 2000s, filmmakers, for whatever reason, were placing it all over their movies for no good reason.
I get why they were doing it. It's it was made to basically simulate a sense of realness and immersion in the action, because obviously it will look shaky to anyone who's in on the action.
I'll say this: I'll still take this trend over what Zack Snyder was recently trying to make into a trend. Let's make the whole movie blurry as shit, like we saw in the Joker scene, the dream sequence in the Snyder Cut, and the entirety of Army of the Dead, where the whole movie just looks like I'm watching the movie without my glasses. You know.
Okay, I can excuse Army of the Dead to some extent, because remember, because of external circumstances, they had to green screen an entirely different actor into the movie.
I get that, but that doesn't explain what's the name of the sequel again?
Army of
Thieves.
Army of Thieves, because the new scene that they made. Well, no, never mind. It was the deleted scene from the first movie, actually.
Yeah, and we noted there was a substantial difference.
Yeah.
Like I remember how funny it was seeing the minute it goes to the scene from Army of Thieves, the background is blurred. But I do wonder if maybe, like, the blurriness of Army of Thieves was made to mask the whole swapping in the actor thing.
Oh yeah, this bald
douchebag
guy.
You see, Dwibs, how awful we are. The moment someone becomes different than the rest of us, we immediately turn on them. That's just how horrible.
I'm more impressed by the fact that they had literally everything in a kitchen sink to throw at him, despite the Mac.
$74 hours after
exposure. Yeah.
And it's after exposure. It makes it the whole thing. I know he didn't actually engage in sexual intercourse with an alien, but the words "after exposure" in this context, it doesn't help.
Well, it was exposed to the pathogen, whatever it was, the mutagen. That this count has been exposed to something.
Yeah, that's what that means with the exposure thing.
Yeah, I'll also say even for the eye, the CGI actually is well integrated. Just to create that effect.
Well, then do it already, you fucking idiot!
No, remember, this movie needs to be sent to the labs alive so it can be dissected.
I mean, see, because you always need time doing a stupid cliche speech. Now you're surrounded.
Dead.
Jesus.
Yeah, that's what you get for wasting time monologuing.
You know what that reminds me of? In the Jurassic Park movies, where sometimes that kind of thing where the bad guy gets eaten by dinosaurs during a speech, or maybe when he's trying to kill the good guys or something like that. You know what I mean, right? Mm-hmm. It reminds me of those kinds of moments.
I mean, I would say it would be like that scene in Deep Blue Sea, in which Samuel L. Jackson gets eaten mid-speech, but yeah, that took him by surprise, to be fair.
Well, the ones I was mentioning were also taken by surprise. That's kind of the whole point.
But I think the one in Deep Blue Sea had more of a decent excuse for the guy giving the speech.
Was it one of the written stuff after test screening?
No, that was always intended to happen. Samuel L. Jackson, the most well-known actor out of everyone in the main cast, getting killed off like that.
Mm-hmm.
That was made to subvert expectations.
And there it goes. It actually was.
From the director of Die Hard 2 and Cutthroat Island.
I must go now. My planet needs me.
Literally.
Hooray! The aliens are gone.
American News Television.
Now it's
South Africa desk.
Actually, only 2 aliens left.
Oh, right.
Christopher did mention that he wanted to get back the rest of his people, so I don't know if he's gonna do it or not.
Well, we haven't got a sequel to this movie, so
Yeah, apparently. Well, I was gonna say before the final thoughts, but there has been a growing attempt in trying to get to franchises basically. The most recent one we got is 2023 doing an interview while promoting Gran Turismo, where Blomkamp says, "I don't know if it's getting made or not."
I do find it weird that that one didn't get a sequel. Don't get me wrong. I'm not saying that they need to franchise it, but like, I mean, I don't know if Blomkamp considers this sacred or anything. I haven't seen anything to suggest he does. And it's legit his most successful film. I'm surprised. Well, okay, maybe it's not his most successful
I'm
one, but it's
surprised
definitely
Sony
his
hasn't
most well-received
mandated
one.
also sequel stuff, considering the profit it gave to them.
Yeah, and Sony are like the franchise monsters of the industry.
Uh-huh.
sure it will.
So I guess the
He
truth
didn't
has come
deserve.
out.
No, of course he fucking deserved it. He was a twat.
Fundita Manga is currently awaiting trial for exposing avenues illegal genetic research programs. District 9 TM, was the Russian alien resettlement operation was completed. District 10 now houses 2.5 million aliens and continues to grow. I guess that's the sequel bait.
So I guess the humans made nice, and also, yeah, Sony laptop.
Oh, again, this is a repurposed scene from the beginning.
The Halo. Get it?
Yeah. I'm guessing it's implied that humans made nice with the aliens over
Either
time.
that, or at the very least, they wanted to continue the narrative in some way.
And yeah, apparently the truth was revealed about Wikus, so you know.
But in general, I
Wikus.
think the whole statement about he was a nice guy and everything. You have to remember that from the perspective of the system, which was incredibly asshole-ish towards the aliens, of course he would have looked like one of the good guys.
Mhm.
Basically, ironically, the irony is he's probably seen as a hero, assuming that his actions, and yes, this is him now, fully as an alien.
He's now fully become a Navi. I mean, Vaperon.
Yeah.
It's came out the same year as Avatar, funnily enough.
And who knows
And
if
there you go.
someday he will be reverted,
I
but
don't
yes.
think there's a post-credit scene. Is there?
The Charlton Copley will be invited to the Amazing Spider-Man initiative.
No, Joe. He's gonna be a part of Sony's Spider Villain verse.
Okay. I think
fair, I wouldn't mind
that's
seeing him as
considered dead. So.
I wouldn't mind seeing him as Alistair's Might. I think there might be some potential for that.
Yeah.
You know what? That could work, but yeah, check. There's no post credits.
So, final thoughts, Waves.
Well, okay, having seen this for another time, I still think this movie has some issues. Mainly, unfortunately, a lot of it contends around the main character. I'm sorry, I just don't feel sorry for this guy. They started him off as a massive twat towards the aliens, whom the organization that he worked for and was complicit in deliberately broke into the ship and just to put all these aliens in a camp and then just evicted them, and then did a lot of extreme measures, and he showed like little to no objection other than no, stop, don't come back. No, I don't feel sorry for him. He's just a twat, and he deserves to get karmic retribution in this sense. Really, the best part of this movie is its visuals, considering its really low $30 million budget. I mean, the crew did do well with what they had. I mean, they might not have aged the best, but considering this was a 2009 movie with such a low budget, I think it's not aged that badly in terms of the alien effects, and especially the effect of the alien ship in the sky. The performances were all pretty solid, considering that they improv'd practically the whole movie, aside from the general plot of what they were going for. The music, it's honestly just background noise to me. I don't really notice it that much.
Yeah, we didn't talk about who the composer was.
Clinton Shorter.
Is he also South African? No, it says here he's
Let me
Canadian.
just look that up real quick.
Well, Neil Blomkamp is he's South African Canadian, so
Canadian,
maybe.
so
I'm guessing this was mainly Blomkamp, getting the boys together for a project, and I appreciate that. Someone who gives his friends a chance without it coming off as biased, mind you.
he has worked on some movies in terms of like ones with a somewhat well-known director behind it. Aside from this one, he also did the score for Pompeii.
Oh, God.
Never seen that one.
2014 movies that tries to basically be a Roland Emmerich movie about the Vesuvius eruption.
And it's directed by Paul W.S. Anderson.
One day, Drova. One day.
Okay, one day, yeah.
Anything else I can mention?
Would you be interested in a sequel?
I can't deny if a sequel ever did get released in cinemas, and if I had some free time, I would maybe go see it just to see how it goes. I mean, it would be a bit difficult to have an entire movie in which the main character has to talk in alien language because he got transformed into one.
I do wonder if maybe a sequel would show that he can still speak English since he actually started off as a human.
Or maybe not follow him at all, instead follow a complete new set of characters.
I mean, I don't really like Wikus, so I wouldn't mind if it was an entirely different cast. Honestly, I'm surprised that a movie like this would attract Peter Jackson's attention, considering that I don't think Peter Jackson's that well known for sci-fi.
He did a lot. He did a lot of pulp splatter horror movies during his New Zealand career. Like I forgot its name. Basically, a parody of the Muppets that kind of goes insane. I forgot its name.
Also, you gotta remember that this movie was technically made off of them at the time not being able to make a Halo movie. So I can see where
to compensate Blomkamp, they have carte blanche to do this.
Meet the Feebles, that's the name I'm remembering.
And with the added bonus of having a well-known filmmaker being able to have his name attached to the movie to sell more tickets.
Like, interestingly enough, by my calculations, nowadays Jackson and Blomkamp are probably big enough that Microsoft would jump up with joy at the thought of them making a Halo
Unfortunately,
movie.
because of that contract that they had with Spielberg that was forged in the mid-2010s, they were stuck with the Paramount TV show.
I've said it before and I'll say it again. What a shock! It turns out Spielberg had almost little to nothing to do with the Halo show. He was just a name that they attached.
Also because the project went on for too long.
Also, Dwebs, remember, you can also theorize that Neil Blomkamp is buddies with Peter Jackson, and Peter Jackson wanted to help his friend get his project off the ground, because kind of similar to the reason Howard the Duck exists is because the director was friends with George Lucas. And George just decided to produce his project.
Because they did such a bang up job with the script of Indiana Jones 2.
Not to mention, George Lucas did admit that he only took the movie because he needed money to pay Skywalker Ranch. Because the movie bombed, he actually had to sell it. Oops. But it's a story for another time.
That's honestly about it. I get that this is a passion project. I'm not saying this film's main faults are down to lack of passion or anything. It isn't. It's definitely got a lot of hard work and determination behind it, considering this film's really low budget. I just don't think it came across really well. And the whole thing about it being supposedly one of the most original films in years at that point, I don't know. I mean, I'm pretty sure I've seen movies that have basically everything this film does. Is just combine them all together So I suppose that's the most original aspect
I
of
was
it.
trying to think because it reminds me of something that Pedro quoted in the past, the fact that it was mentioned that Inception, 1 year after this, did felt like a breath of fresh air, and that is technically a proper sci-fi movie. So maybe, if I had to guess, is that around this specific set of years, the movie sci-fi themed that we were getting were stuff like the Bayformers movie, and as a result, they felt, cardboard as a result. So this probably felt different for other people.
I'm done. I mean, I don't think this movie's god awful or bad or anything, but I can't exactly see the hype.
Pedro,
That's my main take.
All right, let me start with the positive things. The music is fine. I don't have any complaints about it. I don't think it's exactly something that I'm going to be listening to myself, but whatever. I guess it's not bad. And like I've said throughout the movie, yes, even though I don't think he's a very good writer, I will agree that Neil Blomkamp is a technically competent director, as demonstrated by the fact that with only $30 million, he made a movie that still looks good to this day. So yeah, and I don't care much for how the aliens are designed, but again, that might be a budget limitation thing, so I'll let it slide. Yeah, aside from that, the writing wise, it just doesn't work for me. I'm sorry. I feel like the racism and xenophobia angle is handled in such a very heavy-handed way. The allegory, especially now that I know about the allegory that Jove explained specifically to the South Africa history thing, yeah, it feels very thin and very on the nose for me. As for the whole supposed redemption story of Sharlto Copley's character, I still don't buy it. I feel like we could have had more scenes with these two so that, we could have these two actually, overcome their initial quabbles with each other. You'd expect for there to be some kind of scene where Wikus sees how caring Christopher is for his son, and he starts to see, maybe these aliens aren't as different from us as we thought, or something like that, right? Yeah, I get that that's cliche, but it would have at the very least help make his understanding and wanting to help Christopher more believable to me. I just feel like his quote-unquote character arc feels very hastily put together and very rushed, and doesn't really, in my opinion, have the time that it needs to really sink in for me. And like I've said, I also have a tough time being invested in this character, the main character, I mean, because even when they do try to humanize him more by the end of this, it to me, it just feels like too little too late by that point. Not to mention his utter stupidity. I just don't think he's a very well written. And like I said, even without that, I don't think personality wise he's all that interesting, really. He's not funny. He's not intelligent in any way. He doesn't have any interesting traits that make him unique or fun to watch. Not particularly. He's just an over the top angry douche. And that's all it really is. Christopher is the same thing. Christopher is, aside from being a nice dad who wants to, save his son, and then later by the end to save his species, there's not much to Christopher that's all particularly interesting as a character. He's just kind of, the nice alien dad. Like I said, these two characters, which are meant to be the heart of the movie, and to me, they kind of fall flat, honestly. I just don't particularly care much for this. That fails for me. And like I said, the racism and xenophobia angles, I feel like they're not particularly well executed. They feel very heavy-handed for me. Oh yeah, the whole thing with the humans. Yeah, again, the characterization of the humans in the military feels very cartoonish. I just don't find the movie interesting. I definitely don't find it creative and groundbreaking or original. What is in this movie has been done before and better in better sci-fi novels and movies. So I personally don't see much of a reason to watch this. There are better sci-fi movies with these kinds of topics that you can watch. It's an impressive technical achievement for what is a 2009 movie with $30 million of budget. I will say that it's technically impressive. It's shot well. The effects are good, and even to this day. So I will say that. So again, I will admit that Neil Blomkamp is a good director. I just don't think he's a very good writer. Yeah, that's basically it.
Jova.
All right, I'll go next. Okay, I'll admit, I think I've softened up on this movie. I will say this, though. First and foremost, it's fine. I think looking back now, I think I can get the praise of the movie, like, especially given the time it was released, where by 2009 standards, this is very raw and visceral compared to what a lot of movies would maybe do if they weren't sanitized on the subject material. So, throwing in that with Aliens, that's my best guess as to why a lot of people found it unique and original, in which case I'd say fair and fine. That being said, I do consider that this movie definitely has the timing of its release to help a lot with its praise. Because, yes, I do think that there are good things about this movie. I don't necessarily think that they're all incredible, though, especially with hindsight. Like, now, to give them credit, there are real-life allegories that they are going with on this, and I can get why they maybe wanted to do it with aliens. What is a bit on the iffy side is some of the links they went to, like,
Yeah.
Jesus Christ, South Africa. Maybe tone it down with Nigeria, especially in how you're portraying them. It's like, look, I can get the mentality of why they did it, but at the very least, they should have checked with Nigeria themselves first. Like, it's like, yes, even if you had great intentions, it's not the best look. And yeah, the plot can get a little hokey as a result here and there. Like, now to be fair, the whole wanting to consume aliens thing, that's from a religious aspect. Again, though, the fact that pretty much no Nigerians get a good look in this movie is iffy. But moving away from that, the music is good. The effects are great, especially given the relatively low budget this movie had. And I do appreciate some of the thoughts and ideas they had about, hey, what would it be like if they lived among us? Like, now, yes, a lot of the humans are shown to be assholes. To the film's credit, they don't try and go in like every human's an asshole. It's mainly just the ones we focus on, especially since if the ending is anything to go by, humanity was mostly fine with the aliens, hence there being exciting about the alien ship and them renovating for a better district with the aliens. Some of that is stuff that's a little left up in the air. I can definitely tell this was Blomkamp's first big film. It's not terrible, and it's definitely better than Chappie, which came later, but there are definitely a lot of first-timer mistakes here. Again, nothing that sinks the film overall, but I could see this being a candidate for a remake to be made better with that here and there. Now, that being said, do I really want a sequel out of this? Well, I do see possibilities for a sequel out of this, like maybe seeing further what happens with Wikus, or like Tia suggested, maybe following another character or whatnot. Who knows? Now, talking about Wikus himself, one of the main focuses here and there, I don't agree with the idea that, you know, we never see change from him or even Christopher later. I feel like we see changes, yes. Now, whether that is enough to make you think he deserves a better fate, that is completely up to you. I will understand, because holy cow, he is uber douche beforehand. What I do believe is that he does come to legit change and regret his past actions. I feel like that's part of the theming with the movie, where, ironically, the more alien he becomes physically, the more humane and human he becomes in soul and mindset or whatnot, to the point where he doesn't abandon a now friend in need. Christopher doesn't get as much development, but I feel like what we have is pretty much enough of a clear picture of a father looking after his child, and, you know, especially being more paranoid about it after his friend has been killed. Something that brings him PTSD as he later comes to the dissected body of what I presume is his friend who was shot and killed from earlier. So, yeah, I do feel like there is character work actually at hand. It's not told the most orthodox way, but I feel like there's enough where you could get some resonance off of them. And so, yeah, at the end of the day, I think this is a fine movie. I am a bit confused by, the sheer amount of praise, but I do feel like, based off of the time it was released, 2009, it definitely tackled problematic issues better than a certain other aliens film that came out in 2009. One with blue people called Avatar. You might have heard of that one.
But you were going to say the Smurfs.
People have already done that joke 1,000 times. But yeah, no, honestly, I think this movie is fine, which is a massive upgrade from where I was the first time I watched it. Is it perfect? No. Does it have problems? Yes. But I feel like it weathers the storm just enough to give a fine enough look here. I'm not going to recommend you go to huge lengths to see this movie because, yes, it is very hard-headed with its message that racism is bad. But to give it credit, I do feel like it does actually work with that. Funnily enough, similar enough to a Twilight Zone episode where a racist becomes a black guy and sees how it feels, essentially. So, yeah, it was a fine enough start for Blumkamp. It's definitely better than Chappie. Tio, close us out
Yeah.
with your final thoughts.
Okay, being the first exposure to Neil Blomkamp, I say that this is fine, technically. It did definitely keep me interested, mostly as usual, for me to understand the bigger picture, what is going on. And what I see basically, it's a relatively bleak kind of scenario where, because of circumstances, the humans have to live with the problem, but they showcase the fact that they do not like that at all. And they, if they given the occasion, they would just kill all the prawns if they could. I think what the movie is going for, especially with Wikus, is clearly still going native type of scenario, similar to what also Avatar did, but also some old movies like Dances with Wolves, for example. The whole karma thing. I think the movie wants to make a point where, because of his actions, Wikus does not get to have the happy ending that he wanted. He spends the entire movie saying that he wants to be cured so he can go back to his perfect life with his wife and everything. But as we also saw from the beginning, his life, it's not like his life was particularly great to begin with. Sure, he probably had a job where he liked to do, where he was an asshole, but that probably did not mean that he was the happiest man in the world. What he was happy about was his wife, for example. So the idea of him, decide to forgo that and save Christopher and his child in order to grant a future to the prawns, and as a sacrifice, he fully becomes an alien now, completely forgot by everyone, and nobody knows where he went. Basically, I think that's his kind of karmic punishment. It's a movie pretty much doesn't really tell you that you're supposed to like this guy, and as a result, at the end, it's not like he becomes super noble, but he still, decides to do the right thing, consequences be damned. So I get where the movie is coming from. On the same token, Christopher strikes to me, despite the fact that he's very vanilla, the classic, single parent who loves their child. It's so amazing because, again, end of the 2000s, so this was the period of time where the average North American critic was sucking Cormac McCarthy's dick all the way through, So so I can imagine this type of relationship was just what they needed about. But outside of that cynicism, I do believe Christopher wants to represent on the bigger picture the idea that despite the extremely hostile environment, he wants to be the one prom that actually wants to try to make a difference and not to be actively hostile towards the human, while a lot of them clearly are understandably pissed off at them and don't give a shit about them, but that's basically exactly what the humans want, an excuse to enact violence and abusiveness to them. Christopher actually wants to try and make a difference, so him being the quote-unquote nice guy, I think, has a higher purpose for this, even if it's technically not that Shakespearean. As for the rest of the movie, it does follow a couple of, standard beats, but from what he wants to do, I think it's perfectly serviceable. Again, my thought process in regards to the whole originality comment might come mostly for the time frame this movie was made, rather than, the bigger picture as a whole, because if there's something that, again, Detroit missed, but I do believe instead the Animatrix did got, is that the idea of humanity coming to hate a species that it's either man-made by them or comes into first contact, it's a very likely scenario that might happen if we ever, achieve that. As it's been demonstrated in these very years, a lot of the dystopian aspects depicted in sci-fi books of the 50s onward are becoming true with each passing day. So yes, I am inclined to believe that if robots that we created gain sapiens, we're gonna start actually abusing them left and right. While again, it doesn't really fit the originality statement on the whole, this clearly still probably was something new that for that specific time frame of a couple of years, and it kind of reminds me of the fact that during those years there were a lot of experimental movies that were trying to do something that these days would feel a bit too cliched, but back then try to do something different, like say Hancock, a superhero movie that tries to be a deconstruction about that by portraying the actual Superman equivalent as kind of a lazy bum that only helps people if he's prone properly into action. These days, we have seen plenty of different things, like say with The Boys, for example, but back then, it was a novelty, and it wasn't really that far off from this. So it contributes to the whole end of the decade level of experimentation. So I guess that's that particular aspect that was seen by the critics. But considering, as I said, even to these days, this movie is actually still beloved, I can imagine that there is something that, despite the fact that this is not a super novel concept, it still attracts for what it wants to tell. And I guess also the visuals do help. The grimy setting of South Africa that conveys the squalor these poor aliens have to live in, and the oppression that they're given. Even the more sterile, quote-unquote, ambience of where the humans work do not feel as pretty as they probably should be. In another kind of sci-fi movie, like, say, Stephanie Meyer's The Host, we would be able to see that the people in positions of power will have everything perfectly squeaky clean and with nothing wrong with that. But instead in here we see that even in the MNU, I think NMU, I forgot the proper acronym, but
yeah, MNU.
there you go.
Multinational United.
Thank you. Even in their offices, it's still not particularly, wealthy, display of wealthy and cleanliness. So I think the movie is really trying to go for a fact that it's a very depressing setting where nobody's really happy and people are just scrounging to get on the most comfortable spot for them. So I guess that's what it's going for. Again,
it would tie in with the fact that by the end, when people or society as a whole seems more accepting of the aliens, that's when things seem to be getting better.
I guess ideally, like I said, maybe a sequel would have, explored this aspect. Again, similar to, say, John Carpenter's The Thing, I think following the protagonist in this is a bad idea, and we just need to structure with a different kind of people. Maybe have him as a cameo in some parts of the movie. They say, a generic prompt seems to help them throughout the movie, and at the end it's revealed that he was Wikus at the end of the day. Who knows? All of this being said, as the other also said, what the out-of-universe stuff that happened in the making of this movie towards the Nigerians is just unexcusable at the end of the day. At the cost of sounding too obvious, at the very basics, they could have just found a better way to do what he did with the interviews and to showcase properly the integration. It's just not a good look for anyone involved, and it's a contributing factor of the mentality that was at the time, which ultimately led to stuff like in 2012 the Joseph Kony movement, for those who remember it. But I think that's pretty much it. The only thing that I guess I need to be talked about is the acting and the music, and those are fine. Sharlto Copley, like I said, Sharlto Copley is someone who I don't really take seriously all the time because of his acting, but is still a relatively delight. Way too many times in this movie, however, I felt like I was seeing instead Tom Green in Freddy Got Finger, as I mentioned, so that is a bit worrying, ideally.
Tell me, would you put it past Tom Green to consume alien flesh if he had the chance?
No, he will actually serve it to someone else. So this guy that is another animal's meat. That's what he will do.
Jesus Christ.
But anyway, I guess I'm kind of done with this as well. So yeah, this was District number 9. I guess in the future we'll try to give a revisit to Elysium and Chappie, because I guess I am committed to curious to see what else Neil Blomkamp has done. So
And then we'll be able to go beyond and see Gran Turismo. Complete uncharted waters for me.
no, that's Gran Turismo. It's a different Sony AP. See you for whatever we do next.
Yeah.
See ya.
See ya.